What's up, everyone? Aaron Schatz back again for another edition of Tech Talk with Aaron, number 5. I've got some thoughts. I remember the first thing that I want to do is actually talk about this little thing. This is the, what is this thing called again? The Humpton remote dimmer switch. Remember, I had some high hopes for this thing because it has, it's a knockoff of the Lutron, right? And it also has a remote with it, and I was like, oh wow, this could pair with Alexa. So that means it's got to have some sort of Zigbee in it because how else would you do it? It doesn't have Wi-Fi in it. Turns out that's not the case. This apparently works with Alexa somehow. I don't really have an Alexa to test that out, but it does not use Zigbee. At least I can't figure out how it does. I can't figure out how to put it in pairing mode. Can't figure out if it does Zigbee at all. So this is being returned. Do not be fooled. It also didn't say Zigbee anywhere on the product description, so probably my fault. That's why we're doing this stuff. To figure out what works, what doesn't work. This one was my bad. So let's put this one away. I'm going to get rid of this. Put it all in here. And it's gone. What I have been looking at are these contact sensors. This one's from Sonoff. It's the wireless door and window sensor, SNZB-04. And it works pretty well so far. I've only been using it for a couple of days. But it has worked really well in those couple of days. It's on my front door right now. It's all wireless. It's battery operated. That means in a couple of years I'll probably have to replace the battery. But the good thing about that is too, the battery state is actually represented in the actual Zigbee itself. So when I actually get reports, it'll actually tell me the battery level. So if I'm getting close to having no battery left, I'll be able to replace it before it just fails, and I have no idea that it just failed because I'm not getting a report. So that's really good. I don't think that's a Sonoff specific thing because battery level has been present on anything that I have a battery with, which unfortunately is really only other Sonoff stuff, but you never know. I could be wrong. I doubt it. I'm pretty sure that almost everything reports battery level if it uses battery power in Zigbee. We'll get more into the contact sensors and the temperature and humidity sensors, which are both in use right now. I also have one update for the Mini, the ZB Mini that I actually installed in my house. Did not use the momentary switch that I was talking about before. I just jammed it into a circuit box that actually had a regular switch, and it was absolutely fine. For $10, I bought a 4-pack of these that's coming soon. Gonna put in a bunch of places where I didn't even think I was gonna put a smart switch. So for 10 bucks each, I'll put it behind the actual switch, and nobody will be the wiser. One additional thing I figured out about the ZB Mini, if you have really old wiring or non-standard wiring where the circuit goes to the light first and then the switches, you might not need to run new wires for this to work. But I'm not going to test it. You have to see your own wiring. I make no guarantees of anything. So if you can use this without rewiring, great. But I'm assuming that in every case you're going to have to rewire, so that's what you should assume too. Unless you break open your circuits and see all the switch boxes and the light boxes, and then you can see for yourself. Let's get into the meat of this one, which are these two switches right here. You've got the GE or Jasco Enbrighten, pretty standard switch, up and down, off and on. And then you have this one, the Inovelli Blue. Quite a bit of delay there, isn't it? But that's not a big deal, and I'll show you why. This one is actually very interesting because it has an LED bar with 7 LEDs. It also has this other button right here that can do a lot of fancy stuff. In short, if you don't watch the rest of this review, you should buy this one because they're not that dissimilar in price. This one I actually got for $35. This is just a straight on and off switch. This one I got for $55, but this one is now like over $40, and I can't find it for $35 anymore. And it's getting to the point where I would always buy these over this. This will do so much more, and I'll show you why. I'm going to back up for 1 second. If you only want a simple on-off switch, and that's it, get this one if you could find it cheap enough. Otherwise, there's no reason not to get this one. This one does everything this one does, and tons more. But seriously, if you just said, I don't care about anything else, I only want it to do on-off and send events when that happens, this one will do that. And that's it. That's all it'll do. It'll do on-off and events when that happens. That's it. If you want more stuff, I recommend the Inovelli Blue. Another thing that the Enbrighten switch does, which the Inovelli one does not, are fan loads. So that's really important. So the Inovelli one, by the manufacturer website, only supports resistive loads, meaning lights, basic lights. This one, since it's much more simple, can do fans, it can do motors, it can do a bunch of other things. So if you need something that's not a resistive load like a light, you got to look at these switches. So that's the caveat here, right? In almost every case, I would recommend this Inovelli Blue over this simple Enbrighten switch. But if you need one that has a load that's not resistive like a light, this might be the switch for you. With a scene change, I've got my laptop here, I've got the boxes for the switches that we're going to go over right here. One of the things I want to go over first is, again, just to highlight the differences between these switches just really out of the box. I've got the Inovelli one set up as an on-off switch. You can also set it up as a dimmer. We'll go through that in a little bit. The Enbrighten one, on, off, pretty standard. Inovelli one, little bit of delay, on, off, also works for the three-way. Let's superimpose the laptop screen somewhere here. Now you should be seeing it. And I want to show you what I'm showing right here is the commands for the Enbrighten. You have configure, flash, off, on, and refresh. Forgetting the configure and refresh, because they're irrelevant for our purposes right now, you've basically got 3 commands that you can actually do for the switch. On, pretty explanatory. Off as well. So what's flash? Flash is used if you are in like a control center, right? And you're saying to someone that's in the field in the other part of the building, saying like, "Oh, I'm gonna keep this thing flashing so you can see what circuit's on." That's what that's used for. That's actually pretty helpful. Most of the devices actually do that. Let's take our gaze back to Habitat, and you can see that there's really not much going on. It's a simple off and on switch. Let's go to the logs. I'm going to clear out the logs, and let's see what happens here. So on, yep, off, yep. What if I hold this button down? Nothing. Hold this button down. Nothing. So on this switch right here, as soon as you depress the actual switch itself, the command is sent and that's it. Period, end of story. Let's take a look at the Inovelli Blue, and you can see just the difference in commands alone that this switch actually has. And look at all the state variables. It's crazy, crazy complicated, right? But it's not. Don't worry too much about that. We'll get into some of the most common things, and then we'll get into some other less common things. You can set up this Inovelli Blue without putting this on a Zigbee hub. These 3 preferences right here that are in red can be set up via the switch physically. If you read the directions, there are some key combinations you can press to actually do this, or put it on your hub or whatever other Zigbee controller and then set them up like this. And right now you can see that I have, it's just an on-off switch as opposed to a dimmer. I have a dumb 3-way switch down here. And smart bulb mode is not on. Smart bulb mode, say that 3 times fast, is not on, it's disabled. Smart bulb mode is interesting. Let's just say that I had a smart bulb in here. I would want power to be delivered all the time, and I want this switch to not actually turn off the power. I just want it to send events so I can actually do things with those events. That's what this mode actually does. It decouples the switch to the physical power being delivered. Very, very important. One of the things that I kind of got annoyed at was how long this takes to turn on the bulb. Well, wouldn't you know there's an option to change that. So if you scroll down here and you see button press delay, let's just say I want this to act more like this switch. I set it to 0. I save the preferences. Now watch this. Very fast now. That delay is pretty much non-existent. The only difference between this one and this one is when the actual switch handles the command. So this one handles when you release it. And the reason for that is because even though I have no delay, if I go into the logs, let me just clear this for you. You can see that the physical button 1 was pushed. and then physical button 1 was held. And this is another important thing. What you have to understand about this Inovelli switch is that the actual mappings of the button numbers to anything else is arbitrary. It's there as an abstraction to actually go towards a Zigbee standard. And I think the Zigbee standard has things like you have a button that can be pushed, double pushed, or held and then released. And there's no way to really map all that to just like, this is button 1, and you clicked it 5 times. It doesn't work that way. When you hold this button, it's going to assign it something. So when you see things like, I'm going to hold the top down. And you see that the physical button 6 was pushed. That was just me holding the top button. And physical button 7 was pushed. That was me releasing the top. So if I try the same thing on the bottom, physical button 6 was held. That's me holding the bottom. And then button 7 being held is me releasing the bottom. This is interesting because I still have this set up as a not multi-click thing. So I can still control additional triggers with this, even in that mode. And you still have this button over here, which can also do things. So if I hold this button, if I click this button, physical button 8 was pushed. What if I held it? 13 was pushed even though I held it. Why? And then 14 is the release of that. So if I double click this, 9 was pushed. See, just the double clicking or triple clicking. Let's triple click this one. 1, 2, 3. 10 was pushed. It's all arbitrary. You just have to know which events are corresponding to which button pushes are being held. And that's the important part here. It gives you so much flexibility in doing what you want to do with this switch. Cut. 3, 2, 1. I want to go back into this button delay thing. Oh, where is it? There it is. I'm going to set it to 300, which is what I actually set it to myself. Okay, so let's see what we got here. Slight delay, not that big of a deal though. But the important part is, go back into the logs and I'll clear this out for you again. I can now do double clicks, triple clicks on each of the tops and the bottoms. So let's try 2. See, physical button 2 was pushed. Let's try the bottom, double click. Physical button 2 was held. That's the difference. The bottoms are held and the tops are pushed. Let's try 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I missed. See that? I didn't do it fast enough. That's what the delay actually is. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 was pushed. Let's try the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 was held. There's so many things it can actually do. The power lies when it sends the event to the actual controller to do everything. But it just allows you to have that flexibility to do whatever you want. Let's go once again back, and I want to highlight this thing right here, which is the LED bar. And it's not just there to show you if the light is off or on. It can do a whole bunch of stuff. So I can set it a command for this, and let's just give it the color of, I don't know, 5. I don't know what that is. You see that? Your brain's thinking, right? You could do a whole bunch of stuff just by sending a command to change this LED. And that's not all. If I scroll down a little bit, it has 7 LEDs. You can individually control each of those LEDs. You can put weird whatever notifications you want on here. Let's just say you want to know if it's raining. You can have a falling animation of blue to simulate rain. If it's snowing, a falling animation of white to simulate that it's snowing. Let's just say you have a door open. You can have it flash red if you want to do that. So all of the notifications that you think are needed, all the ones that you think are just wanted, all the weird ones that you can think of, you can do on this. The interesting part here is if you actually have the entire thing for something, and let's just make this like, I don't know, 80. By default, this top button here, double clicking, clears out the notification. So let's just say that this is the notification I put in, whatever this means. If I click it twice, it goes back to the default state, which you can also control in this driver. That's the primer of these 2 switches. It's time for me to install both of these in different places in my house. I've got another 3 of these that I have to order, and I'm going to get a couple of the aux switches because I want the ability to actually do these in the 3 ways that I actually have here. This one's going in my kitchen because I only need a simple switch for there. It's really interesting because it's so powerful, and it's really hard to think about like how you would use these. But with something like this that's just slightly more expensive than this one, you've got so much more possible things you can actually do with this. The possibilities are endless. There's so many things you can do with it. I can't even scratch the surface of what I'm going to do with this. The weather thing was just off the top of my head. But I have a door sensor that I'm going to actually set this to be red if it's open. And let's just say you have door sensors on all your external doors. You can actually have all your switches flash red saying like, there's an open door somewhere. That's awesome. To sum it up, I think they're both good for their intended purpose. Again, if you've got lights, I would get the Inovelli Blue. It's just way more worth it in the long run. If you've got fans or other loads that cannot be used with this switch, then sure, consider this. GE, the Jasco, whatever, the Enbrighten line, can actually do dimming as well. So they have a separate dimmer, but I think it's also pretty innocuous compared to the Inovelli Blue. And now you're getting to be really close to the price of this. I would always get this for lights. Any loads that this can handle, I would always get the Inovelli Blue. In the long run, it's a way better switch with way more functionality. And that's it. Again, I'd love your feedback if you have a smart home. I know that a lot of you have tried both of these switches. You've tried the GE, the Jasco ones. You've tried the Inovelli Blues or even the Inovelli Reds, which are very, very similar except Z-Wave. I think really my foray into this smart home stuff without using the Google Home infrastructure is absolutely great. I'm having a blast figuring out what I can actually do with this, and I'd love to hear your feedback. Please leave some comments. Love to hear from you. And as always, thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you in the next one.